The palpable dissatisfaction among Nigerians arises from a shared sentiment of neglect and alienation across various regions, thereby underscoring the fragmented political landscape that has emerged under Tinubu's leadership. As economic hardships continue to escalate, this pervasive discontent has only deepened, creating a significant rift within the populace. Ahmed's resignation as a special advisor serves as a poignant reflection of his disillusionment with the Tinubu administration, particularly its failure to convert goodwill into tangible governance outcomes. He underscores an urgent need for innovative ideas in leadership, reiterating the sentiment that the status quo is no longer sufficient. His experience brings to light a more profound issue within the Nigerian presidency: the often overlooked role of the vice president. This structural disadvantage significantly curtails the effectiveness of political advisors, ultimately stifling the potential for transformative leadership. The relationship between a president and vice president is undeniably critical. Differing dispositions can lead to contrasting levels of engagement and initiative in governance. This dynamic is reflective of the collaborative nature required for effective administration, where understanding and rapport shape outcomes. Historical instances of past vice presidents illustrate that their levels of activity often hinge on their relationship with the president. This observation indicates a common experience across various administrations, where personal dynamics can significantly influence political efficacy. Moreover, the influence of aides and other political figures plays a crucial role in shaping the operational dynamics of the presidency. Their actions frequently dictate the effectiveness of both the president and vice president, underscoring the intricate interplay of power and influence in governance. Amidst these dynamics, concerns regarding ethnic bias in appointments and the president's insular administrative approach highlight an urgent call for more inclusive leadership. For effective governance, diverse perspectives and an openness to addressing public grievances are paramount. The speaker draws attention to the president's limited engagement with advisors, noting a troubling lack of communication with key administration figures. This disconnect fosters an environment ripe for misinformed decision-making, which can have dire consequences for the nation. Furthermore, the speaker illustrates a significant disconnect between the president's administration and the everyday struggles of ordinary citizens. This reality exposes a critical gap in understanding urgent national issues such as insecurity and widespread public dissatisfaction. The phenomenon of politicians switching parties without any substantive change illustrates a troubling trend of accountability and integrity erosion, which ultimately breeds public distrust and cynicism towards political leaders. This behavior underscores the need for a political landscape grounded in genuine accountability. Emphasizing the necessity for younger leaders, there is a strong belief that they are capable of introducing fresh ideas and revitalizing the political discourse. Engaging the younger generations is deemed crucial for the nation's future recovery and progress. As citizen consciousness rises, so does their anger regarding their status and rights. There is a growing frustration among the populace with being perceived merely as voters, rather than valued citizens deserving of respect and consideration. The coalition among politicians appears to be primarily motivated by a desire to retain power, rather than fostering genuine cooperation. This reality reflects deep-seated animosities and undermines accountability for past governance failures, posing significant challenges for future stability. In light of these observations, the speaker emphasizes the necessity for a leader with a clear vision, capable of initiating meaningful change and genuinely engaging with citizens. The contrast between current leadership and past expectations reveals that disengaged leadership fails to inspire hope among the youth. This discussion ultimately highlights the critical importance of rebuilding trust and fostering unity among Nigerians to ensure the country's survival. In a time fraught with political challenges, cultivating a collective identity becomes essential for progress and national cohesion.
So, having spent the last 18 months inside the gilded cocoon of Aso Rock, Hakeem Baba-Ahmed, until recently special advisor to the presidency on political matters, preferred to leave that world and return to the primordial ooze of Nigerian politics. So, the end of a stint in the Tinubu administration, and as one critic put it, another struggle to bring Nigerian leadership out of the dark ages into the light. Mr. Baba-Ahmed, of course, known to be unapologetically outspoken, and he's come out of the experience of that unique position with both guns blazing. He's written an open letter to President Tinubu calling on him to step aside for a new generation of Nigerians who can carry the country forward with fresh ideas and energy. He said President Tinubu had failed to turn what he called inauguration goodwill into effective leadership, and that the renewed hope agenda was not a coherent plan for governance, but more of a set of campaign promises. And he twisted the knife further, insisting that more than half of President Tinubu's cabinet had no business managing an administration that had the huge task of improving security, livelihoods, and the public trust. He warned that Nigerians across the regions are deeply dissatisfied with the North drifting away from the president under the weight of economic hardship, insecurity, and alienation, the East politically disengaged, the South fragmented, and the Southwest, at best, lukewarm. Ouch. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by Hakeem Baba-Ahmed. This is his first television interview, the first he's granted since he resigned as Special Advisor on Political Affairs at the Presidency. He was also, of course, the former spokesman of the Northern Elders Forum. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you very much, Charles. It's good to see you. Long time.
Lovely to see you again, and glad that you chose Arise to come here and sit with us and speak. Tell us, first of all, why you resigned as Special Advisor on Political Affairs in the office, a specific office of the Vice President. I mean, this may sound like a cliche, but did you jump or were you pushed?
I jumped. I went into the position with very high expectations. I desperately hoped that President Tinubu would be successful. I went in there to work for him and for Nigeria, and I believed that we could work. I was made to understand by the Vice President, who was the catalyst to my going there, that there was space to work, there was a job to be done, and I knew, having campaigned so vigorously for 8 years and against the incompetence and the damage which President Buhari did, that his successor, who also pushed the country into the deep end and promised something close to a revolution, as President Tinubu, was going to follow through and really take Nigeria through the revolution and change it, at least in his first term. So I went in there with high spirits, and unfortunately it didn't work out.
Well, I mean, let's get into a little more detail, because I was going to ask you what was it like working at that level, because that's a very high level. I mean, Special Advisor. I'm wondering what your job as Special Advisor on Political Affairs entails and whether your advice was actually being taken.
On paper, it was a great job. I mean, it was a huge responsibility to be the political advisor to a president in the office of the vice president. Was an enormously important job on paper, but it depends on if it's actually actualized in real life. It wasn't. It was very frustrating.
Are you saying that they were not listening to you, or there was never any opportunity to actually exercise the role that you were put there to play?
There was really, you have to understand the structure of the Nigerian presidency has been virtually the same for the last, maybe since 1999, maybe even during the military times. The number two is always at a certain disadvantage. So much of what the number two does depends on the chemistry between one and two, the configuration, the power dimensions, the nature of the cliques around the president. So much depends on what the number one does. And if the president doesn't really feel that the office of the vice president is not central to his success or useful, you just set it up. We've seen that many times, and basically this is what I met and what I left behind. There wasn't much to do. I wasn't used to sitting idle. and there was a lot to be done. If I had been involved, I could have offered my humble advice or opinion, but I wasn't. And I couldn't just be collecting salaries and just sit down and do nothing.
Well, let me pick you up on what you were saying there, because there are all these reports floating around that the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, is being steadily and systematically isolated by the Tinubu ring or clique of supporters in the presidency. Is that a fact?
No, I didn't see any evidence of that.
But you said that it depended a lot, your job depended on the chemistry.
You're talking about my job. Now you're talking about the working relationship. We were talking about, did I do any serious work? Did I, was I...
No, but I'm wondering why you didn't get to do that serious
Like
work.
I said, it's not peculiar to me. Many vice presidents, many people who had worked with vice presidents went through the same experience I went through.
Right, but you were suggesting that that was possibly because sometimes the principal and his vice don't, sort of, the chemistry isn't there. And I'm wondering if he was being pushed aside.
No, I think that there are two different things. The vice president, as an official recognized by the Constitution as the number 2 citizen, how busy he is, how active he is, what he does and what he doesn't do, substantially depends on the disposition of the president.
Right.
So that's a settled issue. And
irrespective of who it is. I mean, which administration.
I know Vice President Atiku, Vice President Atiku's first time, he was incredibly busy. When they fell out, the second time he was virtually non-existent.
Right.
I also worked with another president whose vice president was idle for a substantial amount of time until the president died. And then that's Jonathan and Malam Umar Radwan. I think, to answer your question, the vice president's office is either busy or not busy. It entirely depends on the disposition of the president. I know that in their personal chemistry, this I know from the vice president. They have the personal chemistry between the president and the vice president is excellent. I hear this from the vice president and I believe him, sometimes almost to a fault. Kashim Shettima always says how great the president is and he's a good man, he means well for this country. And sometimes on one or two occasions I've said to him, but if he's so good, I mean, how is it that we see so many of the wrong things going on? And then, but he will defend the president with his life. I know this for a fact. But it's the way it is set up. You also need to understand, Charles, the presidency is a lot more than the president and the vice president. There are aides, very powerful aides. There are other people who intervene. They can decide whether both of them work well or they don't work well. They can decide if the number 2 is active or not. They can decide if the number 1 is active or not. That's how powerful they are.
But you got along well with Kashim Shettima.
Absolutely.
So what did he say to you was the reason why you remained idle, why you weren't being used as you ought to be?
Well, like him, we wait our time. We wait for opportunity. We wait for someone to say, do something.
Right. So was he also pretty much
no, he was
sitting around most of the time?
No, I think in his own case, he filled up some space.
Right.
His own space. He did well. I think he represented this government well. He's an extremely intelligent and hard-working person and very loyal to the president. But that doesn't necessarily reflect on all of us. There were quite a number of absolutely brilliant people in the office. I have met some incredibly good people. He is very good in headhunting. And on his side of the presidency, it's incredible the quality of people that he has there. It's unfortunate, however, that they are not being put to use.
You mean on the president's side or the vice president? Okay,
side.
The vice president.
I was just happened to be the first one to jump, or I don't know whether I will be the first one to jump.
Right.
But I was the one who said no. I got to do something better with my time and my life. There's a country to be fixed, and if I can't fix it, serving and working for this government and this what you call the cocoon, I can do it outside.
And of course, I mean, there's a lot of politics that floats around, I mean, these things, isn't there? I mean, is it true that you were appointed to give the Tinubu administration northern credibility, especially after a contentious election?
If there was, I wasn't aware of it. I like to believe that on my own merit, I deserve to be appointed advisor on political matters. I didn't need an
I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah, well, I didn't need an additional regional stamp to become an advisor. And I didn't see any sinister motive. People say, oh, they wanted to keep you quiet, oh, they wanted to buy your voices and everything. I mean, I started that job, I think, when I was close to 69. I'm 70 now, so I know a little bit about...
Well, you look like a young man to me.
Oh, thank you. I knew what I was doing, and I can tell you that I didn't see any sinister motive or a trick involved in appointing me.
But you must have been quite disheartened, I mean, when you came out, having spent a considerable amount of your valuable time, you know, in such a place, and much use wasn't being made of you. Because, I mean, I say this because you then came out and you've just subsequently written an open letter to the president. You suggested that the president has a closed-door style of leadership, is indifferent to complaints about ethnic bias in appointments, and frequently runs the country from abroad whilst attending to personal matters. And you say that he's become something of an isolated leader heading an insular administration. I mean, that sounds pretty strong.
Well, it would have been easier if it was just about me. Am I busy? Am I lazy? Am I just going there to the villa to feel good? I mean, I have a nice title. I'm an advisor to the president. If it was all about me, quite possibly I would have stayed longer. But I felt I could have been a lot more useful to the country and to the administration. I believed also, I don't like for this thing to sound boastful, I believe I had something to offer.
Indeed.
Which was the reason why they asked me to go there. Not to sit idle and to watch a lot of things going wrong. And you don't have an opportunity to fix them. You don't have an opportunity to engage the president, who has all the powers to be engaged. You don't have any channel. I saw the vice president virtually every working day. We talked, we discussed the country. But Nigeria requires a lot more than talking with the vice president.
But did you have an opportunity to meet the president?
No, I didn't.
For your entire time there?
No, I think I met him, I saw him 3 times in the mosque in the villa. And
From a
we
distance.
sort of shook hands.
Right.
Shake. There's a mosque in the villa, so
Right.
you would see. But I never had a chance to sit down with President Tinubu.
And why do
say
you
to
think
him,
that was the case?
I honestly don't know. I think I think part of the problem is that he never really had time for people like us.
People like
said,
you? I mean, you were a special advisor.
Yeah. I'm not sure he had time for a lot of the people working for him. You quoted a part of the letter that I wrote to him. I used the language very carefully. Said it was insular, isolated. That's not a lazy, the words you use casually. The president really is genuinely isolated. Whether it's by choice or by circumstances we don't understand, the bottom line is he ought to be available to a lot more of the people that he has trusted, either to run ministries or departments or to advise him. And he isn't. And that's a problem for the country, not so much for him. But it's a lot, because the president of Nigeria is a hugely powerful person, and he has
there's a lot of responsibility
on his shoulders.
Absolutely.
So if he's not going to look for solutions to problems from people that he had appointed, there are only 2 options that are left. Is he getting advice from the wrong people, or is he getting no advice at all? And there are other issues that I raised in my letter. I said somehow I just think, when I use the word insular, really was about, when you hear people close to him speak about Nigeria, it's as if we live in two different worlds. And that is the most frustrating thing for me. We would leave the villa, we would go home, we would watch rich people, and sometimes we would drive around, we go home, we mix with poor people. We knew how desperate the country is, how desperately life is, difficult life is, the insecurity level, how high it is. People are losing hope, asking what is the value of this democracy. And sometimes they say, what are you doing there? We thought with people like you, we wouldn't be seeing some of these things. At least, are you guys really advising the president about some of these things? And it all amounts to this idea that the president is either not interested in getting advice, or is getting advice from the people that he hasn't appointed officially to give him advice. Either way, when I use those words, insular and isolated, very carefully, because that's exactly how I read it. I believe if President Tinubu was more open to suggestions and advice, and if he has higher quality of people handling sensitive positions for him, and he makes himself available to them, and they talk to him, and they tell him what they think, I think the country will be better.
So are you going to join the new coalition that's being talked about?
At this stage, no. And I hope even in the future, I doubt it. I have very serious misgivings about all this talk about coalitions and all this jumping from one place to another one. I think these are signs of just how degenerated the political process has become. And it's a very sad thing for Nigeria today, as we speak, a country that has never faced more problems than we have, that its leadership entirely, the whole spectrum of leadership, is all running around looking for places to continue to run the country aground.
Well, I think your term, to many people, described it well. I mean, it's a very insular, inward-looking group that just sort of talk to themselves.
The politicians.
I mean, that's the impression, people have.
The entire politicians, all of them.
I mean, it's extraordinary, really.
Without any difference. Everyone, those in government, those trying to get into the government, those jumping guns in the ship, and those looking for coalitions, the whole lot. I mean, you can count the number of politicians who are literally holding the country to ransom. It's in political science, we call it state capture. There are not more than 2,000 Nigerians who are running this country politically. And it's all about them.
It's extraordinary,
It's
really,
all about them.
And hearing it from someone like yourself, who not only achieved tremendous prominence, I mean, in your own career, I mean, permanent secretary and all the rest of it, I mean, spokesman of one very powerful, forum, the Northern Elders Forum, special advisor to the presidency. I mean, it's quite worrying.
It is worrying more for the country, because the way we are headed, it's going to be either we have a choice between the bad and the worse. There's absolutely no difference. They have no shame. I'm sorry to use this word. Our politicians have no shame. And you leave this party today, and tomorrow you move into another one. And if someone were to ask you, well, what has changed? The only thing that has changed is your party. You're the same person,
absolutely,
hobnobbing with the same kind of people, and the only people who you have no respect for is 99.9% of Nigerians.
The people who give you the power.
So it's all about them. It's all about keeping power or getting the power you lost. And it's all about milking the country. And so long as these guys are going to continue to be the people who determine the fate of this country, I'm afraid we're going to continue going downwards.
Is that why your advice to the president at the top of the pecking order, if you like, of sort of the political structure is to step aside and not seek re-election in 2027?
Absolutely. I honestly and sincerely believed that if I had sat down with President Tinubu before I left, that is what I would have said to him. I would have said to him, President Tinubu, I think you achieved a lifetime ambition. It was lifetime. He had done great things to become president. He had done great things to make other presidents. It had worked. It hadn't worked in the past. Finally, it worked. He had done many things for this country. The best thing he can do is not to run for 2027. The best thing he can do now is to look around, get good people, to find younger people, people in their 40s and 50s and 60s, people with a lot of experience. They exist. People with passion and anger in them, and the zeal to actually rebuild this country, to give it a future, and step aside. He can do that with his party. The moment the APC brings out a Nigerian who is in their 40s, in his 40s, believe me, other parties will do the same thing. Because no presidential candidate in his 80s or late 70s is going to start contesting for the presidency with somebody in his 40s. It has happened before, and we need to begin to show some respect for the young Nigerians. We have messed up their country and our grandchildren. We've messed up their country enough. And we need to have some faith in younger Nigerians. They can fix this country. They can.
And that suggestion you made earlier, which was that you think the president should not run again in 2027, is that a view that is held fairly widely amongst the circles that you move around in?
No. I think the reason why people don't even dare think that is because they think there's nothing that is going to stop President Tinubu from running. It doesn't matter what the merit of this alternative is. People see, even if he doesn't want to run, some people will make him run for their own sake.
But what about the North? I mean, of whom you were spokesman of a considerable chunk for a while. I mean, does the North, you said they would reveal their position on the 2027 presidency in the next few months. I mean, how is that progressing?
I think it's progressing well. I happen to know that there's a huge amount of interest in what happens in 2027. There are a huge amount of expectation that something must change. There is interest in getting maybe perhaps new thinking, new strategies, and there is a lot of determination not to repeat the same mistakes. People's consciousness is rising, perhaps a combination of the suffering between poverty and insecurity, and the idea that people think the North just exists as voters, not as citizens entitled to all the good things that happens to everybody. It's the North. Don't worry about it. When it comes to elections, we know what to do with them. People are quite angry, very, very angry. So there are two things. President Tinubu can choose to run or not to run. And in my letter, I said, if you run, you can win. You can win. But I don't see any value. What you will do is you are going to continue to preserve failure and disaster. If you fail and you lose, your successor is going to wipe out everything you did in the last 4 years, within the first 1 month. That is the level of bitterness that exists between this small cycle of politicians. They hate each other. They are together only because they all have to gang up together. They don't want to be accountable for what they did while they were in power. The only way they can remain safe and in their homes is if they are in or near power. They hate each other, but they are forced to stay together. So it's virtually about 2,000-3,000 people against every Nigerian. And they are playing the ethnic card. They are telling all Nigerians it's North and South. There's no such thing as North and South anymore. The problems of the Northerner is the problem of the person in the South. And there's no part of the country known that can actually say we can get a presidency now that is ours. Even the Southwest, in spite of what appears to be a favorable disposition towards it, the Southwest cannot claim Tinubu.
So nobody can speak monolithically about the North?
No, nobody should speak monolithically about anybody. There are just two classes of Nigerians. The politicians who think they can continue to fool
and
Nigerians,
the rest of us.
and the rest of us. That's basically what it is. Just look
some
at it.
would say that you were part of that group
Yes,
up until
and
just
I admit,
a few days
I
ago.
admit I was working for some politicians, but I was working for the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who I believed came to power, even if it was a mistake. When he said on the 29th of May, 2023, the subsidy is gone. I mean, like a lot of other people, I said, this is incredible. We all knew the subsidy had to go. But if he had the courage, later, of course, he said it was an inspiration, whatever. If he had the courage to say, I'm removing the subsidy, you must say, we're dealing with a revolutionary here. I just wish that fire, that inspiration, had been sustained all through. And I had no doubt, I had no qualms about joining him. I was worried because a lot of people said to him, don't do it. Said to me, don't do it. Don't go there. But a voice inside me said, no. I think maybe we are on the verge of something fundamental. We can change the way this country works. And that's why I went in. And I came out because I realized there was no fire.
And did you find some elements of good leadership in President Tinubu? Was he at some level a progressive leader, as many who knew him when he was governor of Lagos State seem to think?
My definition of a good leader would be a leader who has real vision, not just to become president, but to use that presidency to fundamentally change those things that needed to be changed. Some of them very difficult, and sustain that change, lay the foundations of that change beyond the time that you are in power. So the power is not just an end in itself. It's about changing lives. That's my vision of a good president. I saw a man who labored really hard, worked very, very hard to become a president, who started on his first day by saying, we are going to get ready, everybody, put your belts on. We're in for some turbulence, but in the end, will you all thank me? And then nothing. We went back to normal.
So it was an anticlimax, basically.
It's an anticlimax which we shouldn't have at a time of such time. In the economic management, in managing security, in managing national coexistence. I didn't see the kind of change that we required by 2023 after President Buhari left this country wrecked completely. We needed a president who would really shake Nigeria and say to Nigerians, listen, we've come from a very difficult journey, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. Have faith in me. I'm going to do this. But he then creates an environment that makes it doable. Then he says, then he engages Nigerians. He doesn't just send out press releases. He has an engagement strategy. He talks to the people. He meets the people. I don't know when the last time President Tinubu visited the North. I can't even remember. I've just mentioned the North or the Southeast or whatever, except for campaigning. Look at the Southeast. The Southeast has been virtually just a part of Nigeria. Nobody is thinking about the fact that you need to reintegrate the Southeast. It's a vital part of Nigeria. There's no political thinking in this administration. You need to rebuild the trust and the confidence of Nigerians in each other. If this country is going to survive, we must stop this business of, okay, these people are disposable, these people are dispensable. We need to reunite this country. We need to give young people hope. We need to let them know that this country actually is theirs and that they can live in a world, in a country that is safe, in a country that progresses, a country that will give them some hope that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We're not doing that. That's why I'm hoping that people will rise against the political class now. We need change, and it can happen. We did this in 2020. We don't have all the time to go back, but maybe some other time. But in 2020, 2012, 2013, 2014, when a lot of Nigerians thought it was impossible, I'm proud to say I was part of the team that did it. We showed it was possible to defeat an incumbent government. We showed it was possible to actually remove a government that was incompetent, that allowed Boko Haram to mess us up, that had allowed corruption to run away with everything. And we put Buhari, we thought Buhari was going to be the Messiah. We were wrong. But at least it was done. We can't change this country, and we need to take that lesson.
Okay. I want to thank you very much indeed. It's been absolutely brilliant talking with you. Hakeem Baba-Ahmed, this is his first television interview that he's granted since he resigned as Special Advisor on Political Affairs at the Presidency. He was also the former spokesman of the Northern Elders Forum. Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you.
Thank you for inviting me.